Here is a world of communication, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Elektrischer Reporter.
Die Zukunft, liebe Zuschauer daheim an den Empfangsgeräten oder von wo auch immer Sie uns gerade zusehen, die Zukunft ist die Zeit, die subjektiv gesehen der Gegenwart nachfolgt, lehrt die freie Online-Enzyklopädie Wikipedia. Obwohl die Zukunft bekanntlich noch nicht geschrieben steht, schreiben einige Zeitgenossen gerne Geschichten, die in der Zukunft angesiedelt sind oder vielleicht besser angesiedelt sein werden. Interessanterweise haben diese Autoren ihre jeweilige Schreibtätigkeit jedoch vom Jetzt-Zeitpunkt aus gesehen bereits in der Vergangenheit ausgeübt, denn sonst könnte man die Geschichten aus der Zukunft schließlich in der Gegenwart nicht lesen. Und das wäre doch blöd. Der in Belgrad lebende Texaner Bruce Sterling ist sicherlich einer der inspirierendsten Science-Fiction-Autoren unserer Tage. Von ihm wollte ich unter anderem wissen, ob Zukunftsliteratur noch ein wenig mehr kann, als lediglich nett zu unterhalten.
It's good for breaking people's preconceptions and running thought experiments, and it's kind of good at popularizing background ideas which need a little sharpening, and it's good for just breaking down your preconceptions instead of suggesting that things might be different. But you can get a lot of the same kick out of design magazines, quite frankly. Why do I do it? I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy it, and it does something for me that other forms of fiction don't. And I like it for its sense of engagement. I mean, people talk about futurity in a very abstract, corny kind of way. To read fiction is to see the future not as it's speculated, but as it's felt and as it's lived. It's about structures of feeling and meaning, and that's what literature has to bring to the game of futurist speculation. And that's why science fiction is different from just, say, scenario thinking. It sort of puts flesh on ideas and trends, and I think that can be valuable. To me it seemed very natural. I mean, I didn't make up the term cyberpunk, but, I come from a bohemian creative milieu. I'm from Austin, and into pop culture and pop music and counterculture activities, and I'm still very interested in those, kind of a student of those things. But, as time went along, I became interested in really definitive kinds of trends, and counterculture is kind of a small world and a temporary world in many ways, and whereas green issues are kind of a large, clear and present danger, and it just seemed to me kind of morally obligatory to look toward those larger issues. I have a principle that if a problem shows up on my own doorstep, I won't simply write fiction about it. I will attempt to intervene and do something, because, I'm a moral actor and I'm a player in the world, and I think you're a better writer for doing such things. And when it was, when Chiapas caught fire in 1998 and the plume of smoke from burning tropical jungles went over my home and reached Chicago, I understood that climate change, which was a science fictional idea for a long time, was becoming a reality, and that very little constructive was being done about it. So I did what I could to intervene in that way. I started a list and began agitating and writing about it. And I had already written a science fiction novel about climate change, and that obviously didn't stop it from happening. So I thought I might intervene more effectively in the design world, because they're a little closer to the ground there. And I suspect I will be moving into the engineering world later. Just, from fiction to design to engineering. And if I live long enough, I'll probably be in the military. Really, in the emergency services. It's a hobby of mine. It's not an NGO. I'm not Greenpeace. I'm basically just a novelist and design theorist and sometime design professor. But it turns out that if you get interested in the design world and you write about them and pay attention to what they're saying, you can become part of it. And that's what I did. I still do it, but I don't do as much of it as I did because there are so many other groups now that are doing exactly what I hoped would happen. I mean, that Davos is meeting this weekend and devoting the attention to climate change. No, I'm really tempted to just declare victory right there. If the richest people in the world at this sort of most influential public gathering are sitting and moaning over climate change, why do I have to add my voice, I mean, I was aching to see them do that. If people in Silicon Valley, Vinod Khosla and his colleagues and so forth, are moving from internet into green energy, which they are, I don't really need to get behind that and push. I think I'm very close to achieving my aims in that, really. Well, it's a misnomer to think that, if you want to be green, you have to be deep green and be sort of a granola crunchy in a VW bus. That was an interesting idea 30 years ago. It obviously doesn't have much legs. If that had succeeded, we would not be in the trouble we are in. If you're in a sunlit building, it's better. If it's properly ventilated, it's better. If there are fewer effluents in your body, you're having a better time. If the air isn't polluted, you breathe better. Your children are happier. If the sunlight shines on you and isn't intercepted by smog, you're happier. If polar bears are alive and, the ice cap did not melt, it's a better world. It's not a worse world. The difficulty with a sort of deep green philosophy is that if it's about reducing emissions and doing as little as possible, trying to reduce your footprint, there's nobody so green as the dead. Because to be dead is to have the least footprint possible. Whereas the kind of 21st century bright green, which is espoused by people like worldchanging.com, is a much more active and interventionist. And, I think it's more intellectually sound. It's more humane and better engaged. And the 21st century is going to be green. We're going to achieve sustainability. It will happen. The only question is how many of us die, really. Eventually it's given. If it's unsustainable, it will stop by definition. So do we leap to a new industrial order, or do we just get pushed out of the old one into a dark age? And the answer is both. Some will be pushed into a dark age, and some will leap to a new order. And it's a slider bar, and we want to have the fewest pushed and the most leaping. If you're thinking about the future, you need to put pessimism and optimism aside. They're intellectual vices. It's like covering one eyeball and expecting to get a binocular view. You really need to think about the future historically. You need to think about it with a historian's dispassionate approach. You would not ask, are you optimistic about the 19th century or pessimistic about the 19th century? Bad things happen, good things happen. Some bad things had good aspects later. Some good things turned out to be bad in the long run. To make value judgments of that kind actually damages your ability to think clearly about what's going to happen. So I think the proper attitude is neither optimism nor pessimism, it's engagement. You ought to care about it, and you ought to be in command of the facts. That's what really matters.
はい、こんばんは。私はジムと申します。台湾から来ました。
Zur Beantwortung dieser Frage schalte ich nun live in unser Aufnahmestudio nach Köln.
Alles, was du blockst, kann und wird gegen dich verwendet werden.
Vielen Dank. In der nahen Zukunft, liebe Zuschauer, erwartet Sie eine neue Episode des Elektrischen Reporters. In der Vergangenheit war diese hier noch neu für Sie. Und in der Gegenwart verabschiede ich mich und wünsche Ihnen eine inspirierte Woche. Bleiben Sie uns gewogen und schalten Sie auch das nächste Mal wieder ein. Bis dahin bleibe ich Ihr Elektrischer Reporter.
Handelsblatt. Substanz entscheidet.
Im Malstrom dieser beschleunigten Zeiten ist jede Äußerung Bodenbelag oder manifestierender Beat. Vorwärts stürzen ist die einzige Qualität, die einer authentischen Stimme gemäß ist. In der Verantwortung lebend, dass Bilder wahr werden. Es gibt keine Abweichung vom Mittelmaß, sondern nur Existenz, die sich erinnert oder eben nicht.
Lesen Sie das Handelsblatt 4 Wochen zum Vorzugspreis und sparen Sie über 30%. Jetzt bestellen auf handelsblatt.com.